was leadership. I originally named this class Developing Your Leadership, which I still think is more appropriate because I think each of us are learning things that are helping us develop how to be leaders better. I know I am learning some things that maybe I had not considered being leadership, but whenever you think through much of what we've been learning, it makes sense. But just before we have prayer and go into class, just let me mention graduation is coming up quickly. It is important that that we all be caught up with payments and so forth. Also, there was one other thing here in the local class, and anybody that could come in, we probably should talk about this afterwards. But anyhow, we were wanting to, since it's the end of the first year, those of us that wanted to get together maybe after the last class, sometime that next week or so before graduation, think about a day or time whenever it'd be good for all of us. I know we all have different schedules and everything, so we'll talk more about that later, maybe without taking up class time for it. So let's pray and then we'll jump in here. Father, we thank you tonight for just allowing us to be a part of the school, for letting us to be a part of one another's lives. God, I so appreciate the people that are here, the people that are online, the people that are taking this class, God, because, Father, I believe you're developing, you're building. And, Father, you said you build your church with lively stones. And, Father, the evidence to me that they're lively stones is because they seek after life. They seek after, God, something that is not only giving life to them, but giving life to others. And, God, I thank you for that spirit and that mindset in this class. Father, I pray that all the things that we have learned up to this point and here forward, God, will be something that can be used for your kingdom and manifest in our lives. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Amen. Just real quickly, we'll do some a review. Kind of help me fill in the blank here on... I can't reach my blank if I'm not a top leader. This came out of our first lesson on the myth section. And the myth is I can't reach my blank.
Position. Potential.
Potential is correct, okay. The destination myth. When I get to the top, then I'll blank to lead.
Learn.
That's a myth, right? Okay, that's correct. The frustration challenge. Following a blank leader is frustration. It's frustrating to follow what kind of a leader? Ineffective. Okay. In what challenge is the middle leader hidden? Ego, right. What if I put that the other way and said, you're hidden in what challenge? Or no, you're in the ego challenge, the middle leader is. So what if I put it the other way? So just be able to think that way. Blank yourself exceptionally well. Okay, to me, whether you get that on the test or not, just so you get it in life and knowing that that's the first step in being a good leader, is being able to lead yourself. Be willing to do what others won't. Okay. When you take your leader's time, be prepared. Okay. Okay, give me some steps in the in the leadership loop. After Dr. Hope gave you your notes, you should...
Caring.
Okay.
Learning.
Okay.
Appreciating.
Okay.
Contributing.
Okay.
Verbalizing.
Well, that's it. Okay. Avoid blank politics.
Always.
Okay. An alternative for competing with fellow leaders is completing them. Absolutely. See everyone as a 10. If anybody puts 2, you're going to fail the test. Okay. No, just joking, y'all. This is 2 blanks. Develop each blank blank as a person.
Team member.
Okay. If you want others to know what behavior to have, what do you do?
What's the question?
If you want others to see what behavior you're expecting, what do you do? Model the behavior, right. Blank the vision.
Transfer.
What's more effective than just one leader?
Team leader.
Okay. What qualifies you to lead on a higher level?
Leading successfully.
Say that again, Anita.
From where you are.
Reword it a bit.
From the middle.
No, you're on the right track. Give me a synonym for what you just said. It's leading successfully at one level qualifies you to lead and for leading at the next level. What kind of leader makes the best leader at the top? A good leader where? In the middle, right. So where do you start? When do you start? When you get to the top or when you're... All right. Place a high blank on people. I think we're covering this tonight, so that's good. Yeah. Provide your people with leadership. I think we hadn't got there yet, but skills is the right track.
What was the question?
Provide your people with leadership. Okay, we're going to cover that tonight, so it's a little unfair to go and ask you that.
Yeah. Guide them. With good guidance.
Well, what's the best way to learn anything?
Well, watch an example.
Come on.
You're the example.
Right, experience. The experience. Experience is the answer, y'all. Provide your people with leadership experience. You know, and we'll get into that some tonight. So, starting with slide, those of you that are online, starting with slide 173, I believe we are at, and section 6, the value of a 360-degree leader. As you seek to grow as a leader, you will not always be rewarded the way you should be. Your leaders may not listen to you at times. Peers may ignore you. Your followers won't follow. And the battle may feel like it's uphill all the way. Don't let that discourage you, but by becoming a better leader, you add tremendous value to your organization. You know, I think that's why I've found people before that would have opportunity maybe to move up in their company or maybe to have a supervisory position or something that would say, I don't want the headache, and would rather stay in a lower position. You know, because it is hard a lot of times to lead, because especially if you're in the middle, you've got people over you. Sometimes they're bosses and not leaders, but you've got people with you, walking with you, if you're in the position that we're talking and teaching about, and you've got people under you that's looking to you, you know, for an example of how to act. It's not always easy because you're not going to please everybody. I have yet to meet my first human being that pleases everyone, because it's just not, you know. Even the Apostle Paul said, I'm all things to all people, that I might be by all means win some. But he still got his head cut off, so he didn't please everybody, did he? So, you know, it's just a thing that we understand. You're not going to be able, just because you don't do everything to please everybody, doesn't mean you're not a leader. Sometimes it may be further evidence that you are, because some people are intimidated or even threatened by your ability to lead. Value number one, a leadership team is more effective than just one leader. How important do you think that concept is in a church setting? Because, you know, let's look at Moses. You know, Moses, great prophet of God, stretched out his rod and opened up a Red Sea. Threw his rod on the ground, turned to a snake, but yet there were times he had to rely on the wisdom of his father-in-law. He had to have others. In fact, his father-in-law's wisdom told him, you're not physically able to judge all these people day and night. So he began to split up and had elders over the people and that would come to them first. So it's very important that there be a team concept. Well, in everything we do, but I think even in the church it's even more so, because I think that's why Ephesians 4 says apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher. There's in my opinion, a leadership team that has to be developed to be successful. Pastor D.C. is a good example. I mean, he's uniquely qualified to minister to his congregation, where the rest of us can do it with his help or Lisa's help, or some with an interpreter or somebody, but he's uniquely qualified to do that. You know, whatever you do, you're uniquely qualified to do it. And I think that should give us, any of us, a confidence that God has prepared us to do that. So, leadership is a complicated and difficult skill, one that no single person ever masters. Even good leaders do some things well, while they also do some things poorly. Even the greatest leaders from history had blind spots and weak areas. A group of leaders working together is always more effective than one leader working alone. And for teams to develop at every level, they need leaders at every level. You know, I think there has to be room for leaders to emerge and leaders to grow. I have been in places at times, if people thought, both in churches and on jobs, if people thought you were emerging as an effective leader in any area, they become threatened and begin to cut you off or begin to do things to sabotage the efforts you were doing because they were afraid or felt threatened because you were emerging as a leader. Anybody ever experienced something like that? Anybody want to talk tonight? Okay. Leaders who build teams. As you build teams in your organization, keep the following in mind. 1, visionary leaders are willing to hire people better than themselves. Why wouldn't, if you were on a with an organization, with a company, and had a responsibility to get something done, why wouldn't you want to hire somebody better than yourself?
Insecurity is one. Insecurity in your own self.
Sure.
You're afraid you're going to lose your position and you're going to lose your job because you hired somebody better than you.
But if you're secure in your own abilities, you realize, I think we covered this a little bit last week, you realize that if you hire somebody that can do the job, it's just going to reflect back on you that you're the one that saw the potential in that person, hired them, and did what you needed to do to help get the job done. Okay? You ever seen anybody that didn't want anybody around them that seemed to outshine them, that seemed to be better than they were at a certain skill or... Okay? 360-degree leaders are willing to hire people better than themselves. I just said that. Because they desire to fulfill the vision. Wise leadership. Number 2, wise leaders shape their people into a team. You know, I think sometimes to be able to see differences in people that can contribute to the team and be able to effectively help them overcome their differences, so to achieve a single goal and single-mindedness. That remind just I think I may have told this in another class or whatever, but remember the Titans was a perfect example of that. How Coach Boone saw the differences. He brought the races together. The early 70s, he brought the races together. But there was more than skin color that was difference. It was their likes in music, their dislikes, and different things. But was successfully brought them together and caused them to focus on playing ball together. And then they began to discover that there was more than just playing ball that they had in common. They began to find out there was some music they liked, commonly liked, and that if they began to listen to each other better, that they could develop that. So that to me was a good example of leadership. We were watching. I've got at the house the Sister Act 1 and 2, and we were watching. And after our class last week, we went home and watched Sister Act 1 there, and I began to see the skills, the leadership skills that were being used as she had to deal with those nuns, and some of them really, really religious and really hard, and others that were. So how she successfully had to move through that, and then how the priest came in and watched the leadership skills with him, how they used praise to win her over. And so forth. So once you learn these things, you can begin to see them in different areas and different manifestations, I guess I would say. Vision. Wise leaders will shape their people into a team. Leaders begin to develop wisdom when they realize they can't do anything significant on their own. I think that's a good key. You know, I've seen people that were just bent on doing it themselves and didn't want to give the impression. I got to admit, there might have been times I've been there myself. Didn't want to give an impression that they needed somebody else to accomplish the job because it would make them look less qualified or less able to accomplish the job. But according to what John Maxwell is saying here, and I believe he's right on track here, once they realize that leaders can also develop more humility and begin working to build a team. Okay. Number 3, secure leaders empower their teams. Yeah, would you rather work with somebody or work for somebody that was intimidated by you or by your co-workers or somebody else, or with somebody that was secure in who they were, secure enough that they trusted you and empowered you to do your job? There's nothing more frustrating to me to be given a job and it seems like somebody's holding back the resources, holding back, and actually felt like at times that there's somebody pressing you down. No amount of personal competence compensates for personal insecurity. That's Wayne Smith. Number 4, experienced leaders listen to their teams. How important is listening? If you're in leadership, how important is listening? I mean, how are we going to know what our team members are feeling if we don't listen to them? Okay. Cheryl, excuse me just a minute. Would you check that? I don't know what's going on with it. But if the team member, if you don't listen to your team member and you just go off doing whatever you want to do, then sometimes you'll wind up. I remember when Seth was maybe 12, 13, 14, playing basketball. The little guy that was the guard, and always he happened to be the coach's son, but it was like he was going to do it his way and wasn't going to pay attention until it finally got him in trouble because nobody really trusted him to. If that's the player there, just hit stop and let it stop. Okay. All right. Thank you. I assume our camera's still going, so that's all we need. Listening to what people say, and it doesn't just have to be in an environment of work. It can just be in friendship. It's hard to develop a friendship, isn't it, if you don't feel that the other person cares about what your opinion is. That's why I don't think it shows a lack of friendship if two people have a disagreement. Because that means somebody was listening enough to tell whether you disagreed or not. If it's always, whatever, then that means they really don't care enough about your opinion to listen to close enough to what you're saying for them to give you their opinion back. I think that's a sign of friendship whenever we say, maybe I see what you're saying, but I see it a little bit differently. Can I give you my opinion? And if that's not to me, it's very much friendship. I think even in the area of covenant myself, this is why personally, if covenant is always one-sided, because in covenant both parties have to bleed, right? If you go back to the Old Testament, that both parties have to shed blood. And if it's not a two-way street, and we'll get into more of that. I think we're building toward that anyhow. Productive leaders understand that one is too small a number to achieve greatness. Can anybody name anybody that you can think of that ever achieved greatness without being surrounded by other great people? I remember there used to be kind of a, I haven't heard it so much lately, but I remember way back there used to be kind of a common thing that everybody, that people, when they talked about great men, they would say, behind every great man is a great... Y'all know that, huh? I think it's very... whether it's your spouse or whether it's some other family member or close friend, every person has to have somebody that they can walk together, that holds them up, that stands with them. Organizations are going to improve greatly as they develop teams, because leadership is too complex. You can't do just one thing well and be a good leader. You can't even lead in just one direction. You need the skills to lead up, to lead across, to lead down. A leadership team will always be more effective than just one leader. Any comments there before we move on? Value number 2, leaders are needed at every level of the organization. How many's ever worked in the nursery here? The nursery?
A plant nursery or a nursery with children?
The children. How important is it to have leadership in nursery? You know, it was something came up today, a little thing about, I'm not mentioning any names, but somebody talking about working with somebody that when they got through, the other person just walked off and they had to stay and do all the cleanup. You know, and that's why I thought about the nursery. When I walk in the nursery and there's dirty diapers left over and there's animal crackers left on the floor, and I thought, well, there's a lack of leadership here because somebody just thought it was taking care of the children and walking out and leaving. But there's got to be a team mentality. It's not. Okay, I'm through with my part, so I'm walking out and leaving. I'm a part of the team, so I'm going to finish what I started. That's one of my pet things. And I've worked with people that thought they'll do just this bit, and everything else is going to fall on somebody else. And to me, that's not leadership. To me, that's you're not part of a team that way, because every team member stays with the game, if you will, until the game is over. Okay. Without a leader, vision is lost. Goes back, I think DC pointed this out last time, that Habakkuk said, write the vision and make it plain. So without a vision, if there's no one to write the vision, it's hard to run with something that's not laid out before you, and without clarity, going back to the last section, without there being something laid out to us. As we go forward from from here. As we, I think we're people that God's put together. So as we go on from here, we're going to have an opportunity, I believe, at times to work together as a team to accomplish something for God. And I think it's very important that we understand some of these things, and that we, I think a team, as a team, will carry the load, will help carry the load together.
Right.
Not just one person, but carrying the load together. And if there's a vision laid out for us, then we all can take hold of the plow and not have to look back. Okay? Without a leader, decisions are delayed. Not all good decision makers are leaders, but all good leaders are decision makers. I'm thinking ahead, so I'm going to wait on my thought right there to another part that I know is coming up. Without a leader, agendas are multiplied. Now, here's the thing. Whenever you see people, and it's usually bad in a church setting or in a meeting, there's always people that have a different agenda than what the vision is. That they have a self-promotional agenda and so forth. Teams need leadership to provide a unifying voice. I think that's a key, because I have to go back. My mind always goes back to the scriptures and all when I begin to talk about some of these things. So it's important that whenever we're doing something as a team, that there be one voice that we're keyed into. The scripture says, "My sheep hear my voice, and a stranger they will not follow." So how important is that to us in our relationship with God? Because His voice will override the voice of confusion. His voice will bring peace whenever there's chaos. His voice will speak to the storm and cause it to be still. Without a leader, conflicts are extended. When you lead people, you should always be ready to do what it takes to help your people resolve their conflicts. Of course, we never have conflicts in church, do we? We never have differences in church, do we? I take your laughter, meaning that seems like a joke or something. But, it takes, it's not easy, even in a spiritual setting, to lead whenever there's conflict and things are going crosswise. Even the scripture says, iron sharpeneth iron. And so, does a man sharpen the countenance of his friend, something like that. That's not exactly like the way it says it, but there's us coming together. It's not all time just for lovey-dovey. Sometimes it's that the word in you and the word in me, we sharpen each other. Okay? No. Without a leader, morale is low. I've watched whenever there's no obvious leadership going on, whenever there's no, and people are seeing other things more than they're seeing a leader. Back to Moses, all they could see was the Red Sea in front of them and Pharaoh coming behind them, and it took the unifying voice of a leader to step out there and show the confidence, the leadership that would take them forward and cause them. Of course, it didn't hurt that Pharaoh was right behind them with a mighty army, but it always takes a unifying voice that brings confidence to us that everything's going to be okay, that God's going to take us forward, or whatever situation, if there's vision, if it's on your job, that it takes a unifying voice, or whatever organization you're part of. Without a leader, production is reduced. And that's very evident in some places. I've been at some places when they knew the boss wasn't looking. They knew people weren't around that would bring them accountability to them or something. They would slack up. But real leaders, real people in the middle, aren't going to just perform when the boss is around. They're not just going to, because personally, I like to see something achieved. I like to see what, something I've applied myself to come to a higher level, to a better place. Okay, how many heard Bishop's message last night? And that was, I thought a very good message for where we are. If you want to go to another level, be effective where you are. Without a leader, success is difficult. And why is that? Because if there's no leadership, people aren't going to pull the same direction. They're not going to be. Leadership comes into play even when you don't want it to. Your organization will not function the same without strong leaders in every department or division. It needs 360-degree leaders at every level in order to be well led. And I think it's very dangerous if we've got a vision or a goal. I think it's very dangerous if we are so single-minded that we can't see that there needs to be other leaders besides just whoever's on top. Okay. Value number 3, leading successfully at one level is a qualifier for leading. That was one of our questions. Is a qualifier for leading at the next level. As you strive to become the best 360-degree leader you can keep the following things in mind. 1, leadership is a journey that starts where you are, not where you want to be. Now, any thoughts on that? I think I've already said this, and don't want to sound like a stuck record, but I don't believe in that somebody's a born leader. I believe somewhere along the line, the desire to lead begin to stir in their spirit, in their heart, and then they begin to do things that would help them become better leaders. But I've never known a person focused on yesterday to have a better tomorrow. And that's certainly forgetting those things which are behind, scripturally, pressing toward the mark of the prize, the high calling. Is if you're constantly focused on what was, what could have been, looking backward, then it's difficult to build the future, isn't it? That's one thing, since Cheryl and I came together, it's made it more difficult, more easy to focus on the future, because we have some common goals, we have things, and it begins to be a team concept, a team mindset that we're not focusing on all the bad things that happen in our life, but we're focusing on the future and what can we do if we walk together, if we allow ourselves to focus on something better than where we are. Okay, leadership skills are the same, but the league of players change. Basically, if once you learn leadership skills, these skills are going to be applied no matter where you are. If you change jobs, if you move to another city and become a member of another church or whatever, or the leadership skills that you learn are going to apply whether you're in one job or the other, one church or the other, or one mission or the other. The leadership skills are going to apply. Great responsibilities come only after handling small ones. You know, it's hard to build confidence in people that you've seen shirk responsibility for things that should have been simple, isn't it? I mean, if you see somebody that shirks the responsibility of, well, I'll go back to something else I mentioned. Shirks the responsibility of cleaning up after something that they've been in charge of. It's hard to come back and give them responsibility for something greater, isn't it? Or if they, shirk the responsibility. I think Dr. Hook was pointing out in one of our sessions, past session or two, about parents that shirk the responsibility of seeing that their children do their homework. You know, that probably is not going to be the parents that I would call on to be the leader of the PTA. You know, or I would hope that they wouldn't. Well, probably some of them might be if they were out at the ball game instead of doing. But I really wouldn't even want those people leading the Little League team where my grandchildren now may be playing. So, the only conquest which is permanent and leave no regrets are one conquest over ourself, or our conquest over ourself. That was Napoleon Bonaparte said that. Don't try to conquer the world until you have taken care of the things in your own backyard. And I see people doing that a lot. You know, they want to step out and be Superman, and before they ever are able to take care of their own responsibilities at home or on their job or somewhere else. That's where it really starts, y'all. It starts right there. It starts with your family and with your friends and the people you're around every day. It doesn't start with, well, someday I'm going to be, I think the real people that's made a difference are the people that just did it by nature. They didn't do it because they were politically motivated. They were trying to get somebody to notice them. They just did it because they were. That's who they were. Number 4 here, leading at your current level creates a resume for going to the next level. Every day that you lead and succeed, you are building a resume for your next job. Now, I think sometimes we don't think like that. We don't think, well, I'm building my resume. I remember when I started in IT, actually I wasn't in IT, I was just balancing. I went to work at a bank, and I was just running the adding machine with a paper, running that to balance the DDA as it came through, and sometimes we'd be $1 million out of balance or something, and just out of one tray of checks or something. So we'd have to go back through there and find the problem, find out where it was at, and sometimes it was just a check. It piggybacked on something else or whatever. But when I went in there, I mean, it was actually, to be honest, a better job than I'd ever, coming through high school, thought I'd ever have. But because I was diligent about that, then something came open in the print room of the IT department, and as I began to move on, and they just happened to be changing from one kind of program to the other, and because I was new anyhow and was having to learn, I was learning faster than they were because they were holding on to the old system. So, if you are diligent about your current level, it might, that wasn't my fingers. Cheryl will tell you my fingers aren't the best typing anyhow. So, it was a push for me to keep up. just in the on that little register there to add and subtract and do all those things. But I did it with the best of my ability, and whenever the opportunity came open, it began to move me into another level. So, you know, just a personal story there. I think last week said we could tell stories, right? When you can lead volunteers well, you can lead almost anyone. Anybody ever led volunteers?
The Christmas club. When we used to have the Christmas clubs here, yes, it's difficult.
Yeah, it's
The children played while the adults did the work, but the prize money benefited the children and not the adults.
yeah. And it's, you know, why would that be? Because people get in, get into it for what they can get, but there's not really, you're not paying them, you're not, and so they didn't come into it really recognizing somebody in charge. So it's difficult. We were talking today about some of our history. We used to do camp meetings whenever I was at a church in North Carolina. We'd set up a big tent, and there'd be 50 people show up and 3 people working. So it was, and when you needed somebody else, you had to stop and get them to get together because, they were more into talking and thinking it was a party than it was working. So some of us were, sweating and laboring, and others were just talking and laughing. But you have to take that. You real quickly see the leaders in those kinds of situations. If you want to test your own leadership, then try leading volunteers. It will take every bit of leadership skill you have to get people who don't have to do anything to do what you ask. And that is very much a difficult place. Value number 4: good leaders in the middle make better leaders at the top. Why would that be? If you're in the middle of an organization and you haven't been given any authority, you haven't been given a position, but you have influence. You have influence. People recognize you as a leader without you saying, "I'm a leader." And why would that be? Because any comments on that?
Well, for one thing, if you're leading from the middle, you're working. And so you understand the position of a working person, and you can value the people under you once you move up on in leadership skills and so forth, leadership positions.
I think too, if you've been doing a job that that's difficult, and if you move up and somebody comes to you, maybe with an idea of how to make it better, you're more apt to listen. You're more apt to be able to intelligently identify with what they're saying. And, I think great ideas usually come from a multiple of people too. I remember watching this documentary on the men who built America, and when they showed the part about Thomas Edison. There was another guy that worked with Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison got all the credit, but then the other guy worked with him, and there was a debate on whether to use AC or DC. And Thomas Edison was actually afraid of AC because he said it was too powerful and too deadly. But in the end, the AC current won out because they were able to make the big Niagara Falls generators and all that stuff and so forth. But I think both of them probably won in the long run. But although Thomas Edison was given all the credit historically, there was a team that was developing that and actually brought it into fruition. Okay? In places where the top leaders try to keep everyone else down, the overall leadership is usually pretty poor. Why? Because when all the power is at the top and there are leaders in the middle to help them, the top leaders cannot lead very effectively. I think I worded that wrong or something, but what it's saying, if there's no middle leaders, if there's nobody in the middle to lead, good leaders anywhere in the organization make better leaders at the top. Anytime you add good leaders, you get a better team. And what I'm thinking, we may run across it, but what I'm thinking in the middle of this, there is a place in here, and we'll probably come across it anyhow, that says that if there's no middle leaders, everybody winds up waiting for the one at the top to give them instruction. And what if that person, for some reason, doesn't have the time or doesn't know he needs to give instruction or whatever, then everything slows down, everything gets held up. Every time a good leader, you add a good leader, you get a better team. Good leaders minimize the performance of those on their team. They set direction. All you would have to do is look for teams with consistently high results. That's where the good leaders are. How do we measure results? It depends on what we're doing, right? If it's a ball team, you measure results by wins and losses, or if you're looking at individuals on the team, you measure by how well they perform. There's different things that you look. There's got to be something to measure with. I know that's hard for us in the church to talk about there being a way to measure, because we think, well, we don't want to look at somebody else better than the other. But I think even in the church, people want leadership. People want to see people that they can trust in, that they can trust their opinion, they can trust who they are. Okay? Every time you add a good leader, all the leaders in the organization get better. I think that's where some people go wrong. They think if they add another good leader, then they lose the influence. But if we add good leaders, then we're not having to watch over their work, but we're able to function as a team and everybody doing their job. When a good leader joins the team, it makes the other leaders take notice. Good leaders bring out the best, not only in the followers, but also in the leaders. Good leaders raise the bar when it comes to performance and teamwork, and this often challenges other leaders in their organization to improve. I think that's healthy. Competition has always been healthy. You can have competition without making enemies, can't you? Okay? Good leaders in the middle add value to the leaders above them. You know, I think leaders at the top, if they're wise, will find those that can add value to them. When there are no good leaders in the middle of an organization, then everyone and everything in the organization waits. Here's what I was talking about. Waits on the top leader. On the other hand, when good leaders in the middle use their influence and commitment to assist the top leader, they stretch the top leader's influence beyond their reach. As a result, the top leaders are able to do more than they would ever be able to do on their own. Now, I know there's somebody in here that can think of a time whenever you were able to do things as part of a team that complemented and actually made your leader look better, whether you got credit for it or not, because of something you did, something you were able to accomplish as a part of the team rather than just on your own. Anybody?
One thing that I learned in my tenure in the military was that in order for a mission to be completed, it takes more than one person to complete the mission. And the same thing happens in an organization where you're in the assembly line or whatever part of your plan.
Speak up a little bit because we got the tape.
It takes whoever's in leadership more than management, to be able to guide the group or the team or however many persons who may be to get the task accomplished. One of the things I learned as I'm producing television program shows that you have a good idea, but if you don't have the individuals to help you develop that idea and then to be able to put it on video or on tape, that good idea was just wasted. It was just a good idea.
Yeah.
It was never developed. And so, in order to do that, it takes a team effort to do it. It takes more than just one individual.
I would think, and you can answer this. This is a question for you. In those times whenever it wasn't developed, was it more dependent on the person with the one person with the idea, or the team to do it?
No, it was actually dependent on the team, because many times I had to go to resources and see who was more a capable individual of developing the idea that I had to produce a certain program, whatever topic it may be. Not everybody's good at the same topic, so you have to do your research and find the individuals who are good at that topic. And one of the programs I produced, it was a controversial topic that deals with their church issues. So you had to find people on both sides of the same subject you were talking about to be able to discuss the pros and the cons, and keep the whole program balanced so that it could be a good product that's worth watching. I mean, but it took more than just one individual.
So what my question, to further clarify it, my question is, the things that fell through the cracks, why do you think it did?
Because you didn't connect with the right individual, or
right.
I didn't connect with the right individual to be able to bring the idea to fruition and bring it to a productive production stage. Okay.
So was it depending on that one person that you didn't connect with, or?
Now, sometimes it depended on more than one person. Sometimes it depended on 2 or 3 individuals.
Okay.
A lot of times, and that has to do with timing. If you can't get the right individuals at the right time to be able to produce that particular product, it's just, it was a good idea, but it fall through the cracks because all of the key ingredients weren't there to enable to put the program together.
Okay. So that was a very good example of needing a team flowing the same way. Okay, good leaders in the middle release the top leaders to focus on their priorities. There's always in every organization, every church, every business, times whenever what I would call wildfires will crop up, where things are, and if the top leader is constantly having to chase those wildfires, or constantly having to deal with situations that are not unifying, then that keeps their focus away from the priorities that the business, the ministry, the whatever needs to go toward. So the leaders at the top can only be as good as the middle leaders working with them. When you perform with excellence in the middle, you free up your leader to perform with excellence above you. So there was a story we used to tell, I think several years ago in ministry, that if you find a turtle sitting on a fence post, you can be sure he didn't get there by himself. Why? Because turtles aren't equipped to climb posts. So, that's the thing. There's got to be people in the organization. You could almost, if you understood the full scope of being a deacon in the deacon groups here, you could almost have some. I started to say feel sorry for. I don't think that's because that's supposed to be the first line of defense to get the fires put out before they ever reach the top. Because if one person's having to focus on all those problems and even all the good things, sometimes whenever things are going good and whenever there's a real move of God and all, I don't think you can just take time to take praise reports all day long. It's good to have times for people to make them and give them, but, just like back to Moses, he sat there day in from sun up to sundown listening to people's problems and wasn't getting the work done that needed to be done. Okay. Good leaders in the middle motivate leaders above them to continue growing. Just because you're at the top, does that mean you stop growing? That probably means you're in a unique position that you need to grow even more. When a leader grows, it shows. When a leader grows, it shows. Growing leaders continually improve in their effectiveness and in their leadership. Good leaders in the middle give their organization a future. There was a little chart there, and I did a little table there that kind of gives today's worker, tomorrow's leader. Today's worker implements current ideas. Tomorrow's leader generate new ideas. In other words, not when they get to tomorrow. Now, as a worker, you can see those that are generating new ideas as the potential leaders that are coming up. Okay, today's worker identify and define problems. Tomorrow's leader solves problems. Not when you get to tomorrow, you solve them today while you're a worker, and that leads you into leadership. Today's worker get along with the people they have. Tomorrow's leader attracts sharp people. Bishop tells us sometimes about you can see people, you can have a room full of 500 people, and people that are like-minded, they'll find each other. If they're goof-offs or if they're, whatever, they'll find each other. But it's the same way the other way around. Leaders will find leaders. Those that are wanting to step up to another, they'll find each other. Today's worker works within the current framework. Tomorrow's leader takes risk. In other words, if I'm working in the current framework and I can see a better idea, a way to make it work better, then I will attempt to do whatever I'm doing in that way until it shows me that it's not a better idea. See, because how are you going to grow if you never take risk? How are you going to grow if you never, if you just say, okay, this is what they said do, and we're not going to get outside this box? But real leaders aren't in a box. Real leaders think for themselves. The worst case scenario is places where they didn't want you thinking. They didn't want just do it like this and don't rock the boat. That's because they were afraid of their leaders over them. And they thought if it's going to make them look like they're not in charge and they're not keeping you in control if you take risks. But sometimes to prove a point, sometimes not just to prove a point, to make it better, you're going to take risk. Today's worker values consistency. Tomorrow's leaders value the support and spot opportunities. That's the same thing. If you're if you're working with somebody and they're spotting opportunities, it's obviously, that is a better way. Let's try it. Then that's the person you want to help motivate and help bring into leadership. Okay, value number 5, 360-degree leaders possess qualities every organization needs. Adaptability. Quickly adjust to change. How many has ever experienced change? I love these times when I've been around church folk and they say, well, God changes not. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Well, that's true, but I've found out my concept of God and my understanding of God changes daily. And while I know God changes not, He's the same yesterday, today, and forever, I have to change as He begins to reveal Himself to me greater and greater. Absolutely. Okay? Blessed, we've said this for a long time, but actually I think John Maxwell's the one that coined this phrase. Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape. So, there's a big need for flexibility in all of us. Okay. Discernment. Understanding the real issues. I hate it whenever there's issues, and this is my little rabbit trail here, but I hate it when there's real issues and everybody's fogging up the real issues with all these things that don't matter. Just all this stuff that's just, what's that got to do? We used to say a little joke, what's that got to do with the price of rice in China or something? But what's that got to do with the current situation? What's that got to do? And somebody's just going off on something that's not relevant. What's the real issue here? Good leaders cut through the clutter and see the real issues. They know what really matters. Let's just go to what really matters. Just don't waste my time. I'll be honest, there's times even whenever some people are preaching, I'd just as soon, if it wasn't for my position sometime and people watching me, I'd just soon get up and walk out, because some people just wasted my time. What's that got to do with what God's saying? And one of these days when I do it, y'all will say, bless Brother Roger. Servanthood. This is a biggie with us. Servanthood does whatever it takes. Now these are things leaders do. Does whatever it takes. You have the heart of a servant if it doesn't bother you to serve others. You know what? Have you ever been around people that it just, they'll do something because it's expected of them, but the whole time they're gritting their teeth and they'll be glad when this thing is over. Personally, I enjoy, can I use the I word? I don't mean this, but I enjoy, and I think you do too. I look around the room and I enjoy being around people. I enjoy talking with people and sometimes just cutting up a little bit with people or something, and just making it real with them, because if they need something, find a way to help them. Find the words to encourage them. Find the directions. Find something that will help them. Move on. Resourcefulness. Find creative ways to make things happen. If we're constantly trying to do something one way and it's not working, so what somebody said, insanity is doing the same old thing the same old way and expecting different results. So if you're resourceful, you say, okay, that's not working. Maybe we should try it another way. Now that's discouraging whenever, and I'm not going to point out any situations, but it's discouraging sometimes whenever you are working in a situation, you're trying to help somebody, you're working with somebody to get things done, and you see things differently, but they're stuck and they won't move on to another way to do it. Okay, that's discouraging and frustrating. Goes back to our frustration myth there. Yes, sir.
Like what we were talking about, how especially Bishop, what he was talking about last night, the things that you go through make you like. I can't go with the thing that leaders aren't born, because I believe they are. I believe that we all are born into the kingdom, therefore we are born of Christ. So therefore He was a leader, so shall we be. Development of that leadership and learning and doing it, yes, you have to do that, but resourcefulness, like if you've been without, and some people will say, well, that person don't have much, God must not trust them with, I've heard that a million times in my life about people, they'll say, hey, God must not trust them with money because they don't have nothing, or they don't believe big enough or nothing. Well, maybe sometimes you have to be in a position to be resourceful, because you get used to doing with something, and you get used to not having all these other things, and you're happy with where you are. If you expect, if you're going into missionary and you're going to be like, Benny Hinn or somebody with a multi-million-dollar organization, and he sets you in, some 30-person village in the middle of Africa with no electricity, one well, and you got to walk 20 miles to the well to get clean water. I mean, what's all that teaching and having a Mercedes and having money is going to help you there? But when you've been tough and you're used to doing without, and you're happy, and no matter what you got, and you see these people are happy just because they call them a gazelle and they're eating it, and you join in with them, you'll join in a whole lot quicker than somebody's expecting to stay, expecting to do for them. You'll be there doing for those people, serving those people, and trying to make their life better, and not even worry about your own needs anyway. So that's what makes, I think, those kind of events in your life make you resourceful, make you a servant, or show you how to be a servant better.
Sure, and that's the reason you start you start serving or not start leading from the middle with a servant's heart. And a servant's heart is just not I've got to find somebody to I believe in washing people's feet, and so forth, as far as serving them, but I don't go out, and maybe you do, but I don't go out every day saying, well, I got to find somebody to serve. But I do go out every day with a heart that if there's somebody in need, I'm willing to serve. I don't believe everybody's called to be a Benny Hinn or T.D. Jakes or something. There are people, we know people that were called for 50 years to be in Africa in some of the situations you just mentioned. That I'll be going with this fall on a trip over there to some of those places back in the woods where there is no maybe electricity 1 hour a day, because that's all they have the resources for or whatever. But to me, in the kingdom of God and in those people are just as great. Arthur Lee's the guy I'm talking about. 50 years in the backwoods of the bush of Kenya and Uganda, probably reach as many people as T.L. Osborne. But T.L. Osborne reached them in one meeting, and his job was over. Where, to me, the greater leadership, not trying to, this is no putting down at all of T.L. Osborne. He was a great man. But to me, for him to go live amongst the people for 50 years and be there to teach them, train them, cry with them, still responsible for some of their children and so forth. Very, very much leadership. So.
120 churches that are established and taught.
Went in and raised them up from nothing, won the pastors to the Lord, and began to train them, and they began to want, that's that.
About people that believe they have to circumcise their daughters. It's amazing to me. It just is. It's greatly impacted my life to know that.
Yeah.
I've just seen both sides of the leadership, especially like Pastor DC said in the military. It's an organized, everything's organized. Just like this leadership class is very organized. It's all steps, it's all everything you do. Every time we have a training session, you have a before training session meeting and then a after action review. So you have a right to say, well, you kind of work the training out, then you do the training, and then afterwards you all sit around and everybody's got a voice to tell the leader what we felt went, well, how'd you like the mission? Well, I felt it went this way. And everybody's got a right to speak up no matter what rank. And the leader then takes that, and when we actually really have to go do it, then he's saying, well, I know they made a mistake here and here, but they said if they did this better, this would work this way better. And, that's what makes a leader. He takes, like you said, he takes and listens. But I've also seen leadership to where it's all about here, too. In Iraq, we lost our supply train because we were so far ahead going into Baghdad. We had like 3 MREs on the whole to last us a week. And, that's 1 MRE a day. Now, you're supposed to get 3 a day per person. And so we're sitting there taking and cooking up one meal, and between 3 people in our vehicles sharing. Our leader, he could have said, hey, I want the spaghetti. You're going to get the chicken a la king, the worst meal in there. But he took his spaghetti and said, all right, here, I'll take a bite. You take a bite. You take a bite. And see, that's leadership. He didn't have to do it. He could have split it up different ways. But it kind of brought us all like we're a family, like we're one. And then we were fixing to go into really serious battle. And it kind of helped in the end that way, too. So I've seen leadership just arise in people. And now I've seen it trained in the people, too.
Sure.
So, kind of hard to say if you're not doing it.
Well, even in the military situation, whenever there's a demand for leadership, I think there's some things that come out of us because there's no choice. Just like you were talking about, my mind went to some of the stories I'd heard about the soldiers in the Revolutionary War and in the Civil War on both sides that were went out there, went days without eating anything, and didn't have the proper clothing or anything else. I thought about a lot of those situations that. So it's kind of relative to where you are. Maturity puts team before self. In leadership, maturity is putting the team before oneself. Endurance. Remains consistent in character and competence over the long haul. 360-degree leader can't afford to have a small heart. Small hearts with all challenges that come to leaders, especially leaders in the middle. Leadership is an endurance race. To succeed, 360-degree leaders need to respond well to challenges and to keep responding well. It's not just a one-time thing. Today you were in a good mood and you did okay, and tomorrow you're in a bad mood and you cut everybody down. Accountability can be counted on when it counts. Okay, real quickly, just the section 6 review. The value of a 360-degree leader. 1, a leadership team is more effective than just one leader. Number 2, leaders are needed at every level in the organization. Number 3, leading successfully at one level is a qualifier for leading at the next level. Good leaders in the middle make better leaders at the top. Number 5, 360-degree leaders possess qualities every organization needs. Okay, just a reminder, next week